So I'm very excited to be making today's video, and I don't get excited about a lot of things, actually, for some reason. But today I am particularly excited because of this app, this software. I got access to it in a research capacity, but I just think this is really exciting. For those of you that don't know me or are new to this channel, my name is Justin Sung. I'm a former medical doctor and now a full-time learning coach. I work with thousands of students from around the world to help them learn more efficiently. That's who I am, and what we're talking about today is some cutting edge stuff that I'm really excited to get into. The app that I'm talking about today is this thing called DALL or DALL, and it's this crazy AI platform. You might have seen it on Instagram, and the idea is that you can sort of type a text description of what you want, and it will automatically, through artificial intelligence, generate the image that you want. And you can get some crazy specific things, like you can read some of the stuff that people have written here, and it's insane. These are images that are generated through artificial intelligence based on the text that is here. And you can read a little bit more about this. I'll check a link in the description to this. But it's very interesting for me because I teach in my program, as well as just on my other YouTube videos, the idea of taking notes through some visual and abstract representation. And the thing is that we know from the research on note-taking that note-taking is not a very straightforward thing. A lot of people think that it's about just, you write your notes this way, you write your notes this way, but it's a lot more than that. It's about what's going on in your mind, how you're processing the information when you're writing the notes. There's so many variables that affect the learning that you're getting from writing notes. We know that the actual topic that you're studying, the way that it's structured, the way that you write it, the method through which you're writing it, the amount of thinking that goes on before writing it, the word count, all of these things are related to each other, and it creates a relatively complex picture around note-taking. However, there is one aspect of visual note-taking that I often teach, which is for people to try to create abstract visualizations of their notes when they need to add a form of memory cue. Now, you don't need to over rely on this, but every now and again you have sort of a list of things that you need to remember, and it's hard to remember, and you may be tempted to just put them on flashcards, which could be okay, but sometimes you want to reduce your flashcard load, or you just want to have a different way of learning it, or a stronger memory cue that's going to last you a long time. There are multiple methods of learning things like this that are out there. A lot of memorization techniques that are taught out there. Some of the most common ones would be the method of loci, or the memory palace, the link method or story method. There's actually a few of these, and they're all kind of suited for slightly different purposes. I teach a variation that takes concepts from all of that and integrates it with the cognitive processes that I teach in my full learning system, which I just call the modified method of loci, which is a little bit different to the link method, a little bit different to the normal method of loci method, but it integrates more nicely with the method of higher order learning that I teach. And if you're interested in learning that, then you can do so, and you can learn everything that I teach in my full program, which again, you can find a link for that in the description. But that's not the point of today's video. The point of today's video, is it possible to achieve the same level of learning and memory benefit through an AI generated image compared to one that you draw yourself? Because the thing is, my hypothesis, and to my knowledge, there isn't any actual real research on this, but there is research on individual cognitive effects surrounding this. And based on that, my hypothesis is that the major learning event that is occurring when we go through to create an abstract visualization and a drawing to serve as a memory cue is the process of abstracting on the idea to think and imagine what type of image could be suitable. And I don't think there is a significant benefit of the actual process of literally drawing it. Just like how there is very minimal benefit to the actual act of writing notes in terms of your memory. It's more about the processing that goes on as you're writing, or the processing that goes on before writing. But the actual act of writing is a very minimal learning event activity. And a lot of people struggle with drawing. So that's the experiment. I want to run this very non-scientific experiment here where I use the same cognitive process in terms of taking information, trying to remember it and memorize it. And this is lower order stuff. This is stuff that doesn't fit into any higher order schema. It's harder to learn through any other form of encoding. And I'm purely relying on just a memorization aid to do this. It's a necessary part of learning, especially for some curriculums like medicine, where there are things that you need to memorize. So my cognitive process is going to be much the same. I'm thinking about the information, I'm abstracting the information, I'm thinking of a visual to serve as a memory cue for it, and I'm constructing something. The only difference is, in one hand, I'm going to use the software to generate the image for me, and then the other hand, I'm going to draw that by hand. And I'm going to see, is there a difference in terms of the memorability of each of these? Now, I've got lots of experience with the drawing aspect of it, and I know that it takes time, even for me, and I consider myself pretty comfortable with drawing. It takes time and it takes effort. The AI version of it is much faster. However, to generate things, you still need to spend time to get your text exactly right. And I'll show you, and we'll go through this together. I want to see how long it takes. I'm going to time both processes to see how long does it take for me to get to the image that I'm happy with, and then what is my actual ability to recall the information. And again, remember, in this example, we are only looking at lower order levels of knowledge mastery. So I'm only worried about whether I can recall the information. It's not going to be a suitable method of learning for higher levels of knowledge mastery. For example, if I need to really apply it for complex problem solving, or if I need to see the conceptual relationships and the influences that it has on other ideas. So again, understanding the limitation of this technique is very useful when used in the right way. It's very negative when it's over relied on. But in the context of where it is useful, I want to see what wins. So let's start with these two things. I basically just picked two rare diseases that I personally have never heard of. I just went and searched for rare diseases, and I just found two that I've never heard of before that seem like it's kind of complex. There's a lot of stuff to learn about it and a lot of things that I need to memorize. So that's basically what I've got here. Maybe I should know about these diseases, but hey, it's been a little while since I've been practicing medicine. So, forgive me if I don't know about these diseases, but it does say that they're rare. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do with both of these processes, I'm just going to go through and isolate the list of signs and symptoms of this particular disease. And then I'm going to learn this one using the traditional freehand method. And then the other disease, I'm going to do the same thing, make a list for the signs and symptoms, and I'm going to try to create the visual for that through DALL instead. Now, I'll talk through a little bit of the thinking process for those of you that want to engage in this thinking as well. I definitely recommend it, and it's quite fun to do. In my experience, specifically in medicine, I've had certain things that I've spent maybe an hour, 2 hours really thinking of a great visual for it. And a lot of people would say, man, 2 hours to memorize just a single list seems like a long time. But actually, you have to think about it in the entire span of when you need that knowledge. There are things that I've spent 1 to 2 hours creating a series of visuals for to memorize, let's say 70 to 100 different things. And it just works. I'm able to retrieve that information for years with very, very, very little time. I almost never really have to review it again. I probably look at it like once a month later, and then like another time 6 months later, and I'm able to hold on to that for years. In fact, I can still remember some of the stuff that I made drawings on and what it stood for like 7 years ago. And the good thing about doing it this way compared to a lot of other methods of doing it is that it doesn't require any prep time. There are some techniques that are out there that require you to like build this kind of algorithmic table where you sort of are able to memorize, let's say, hundreds of different things, but it takes like 3 days to prepare to be able to use that memorization technique. And once you use it once, you can't reuse that same table. And it's just kind of practically not viable. It's more of a party trick. But the good thing about this, it doesn't take any prep time. You can just do it straight off the bat, and it's leveraging off of, the parts of your memory and cognitive effects that are allowing you to hold on to things a little bit more effectively. Let's just go through and isolate out the signs and symptoms, make a list of these. All right, so this one I'm going to do through the freehand method. So let's see how long this takes. And the method through which I'm doing this is I'm just going to read through these, and I'm trying to think of kind of the story. I'm trying to think of the sort of abstract representation of this. I'm going to make sure that the elements of these are interacting with each other. There's kind of layers to this. It's not just kind of a flat static image. It's a dynamic image of events and relationships. So each of the individual elements leveraging off of another element to help it be memorable. So for example, if I have an image of like one person throwing a ball to another person, then I'm more able to remember all three elements, the person, the ball, and the other person, because it's like, if I have the person, what are they doing? Or they're throwing the ball, so I remember the ball. And then, well, where are they throwing the ball to? Oh, there's the other person. So I have to make them interrelate to each other. That's not a great example because a person throwing a ball isn't very memorable, but it might be a person with a dinosaur head throwing a meteor to a wombat, something absurd that's going to help me to remember, whatever it is. So here's the process that I'm going to go through with this thing. Eosinophilia, this is a situation where you've got high blood count from a certain type of immune cell. It's often seen in parasitic infections. Now, all throughout my medical school, every time I thought of eosinophilia, I thought of a worm in a bubble, like a parasite in a cell kind of idea. So that's kind of the idea that I have here. I'm going to draw this out just for you guys to be able to see what I'm thinking, but I wouldn't normally draw it out like this. I just do it in my mind and then I draw it. Pruritus is itchy skin. So I usually represent this with a person that has cuts and scratches and scabs and things and redness all over them. So that, I'll just draw that as a red person like that. Abdopain I usually do with a sword or a knife in the stomach or bleedings from the stomach or, a bullet wound or something like that. Chest pain I usually do in the same kind of way, some kind of injury, something very dramatic going on in the chest. Myalgia is talking about pain in the muscles. Subcut swelling, so this is swelling underneath the skin. Hair, I may do something like some crazy ballooning out, like a huge kind of, big massive swelling under the skin somewhere. Maybe I'll do that. Hepatosplenomegaly, this is the enlargement of the liver and the spleen. And then pleuritis and pericarditis is inflammation of the lining of the heart or the lungs. Okay, so I've got a few ideas right now. It hasn't been that long. I think maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds or so that I've been thinking about this. But I have this kind of idea in my mind of like a guy that is like reaching out for help. There's this big hook coming out from their chest and this chain behind them that's sort of chaining and then holding them in place. And then in front, they've got this spear that's stabbing them through the back. That's going to be my chest pain. And then this is going to be my abdominal pain. I'm hoping YouTube doesn't flag this for violence or something. Let's hope. That's what I've got so far. So here I've got chest pain. I've got an abdo pain. Oh, and what they're reaching out to is going to be this like kind of glowing like worm that's sort of hanging in the air inside this bubble. And they're sort of like desperately trying to reach out for this worm as if that's going to be their salvation. So I've got something kind of interesting going on there. And let's see how we can integrate the rest of the stuff going on. I think straight away when I'm looking at this, the subcut swelling, I might give this person like balloon legs that are like really, really swollen, something like this. Make the calves really, really small. So that's going to be the subcut swelling. We've got the muscle soreness as well that I need to demonstrate somehow. Now, at this point, here's a good tip is that when you're drawing your thing, if you have got too many things going on in a single frame, like with this person's already got a lot going on. They've got the chest pain, they've got the abdo pain, they're reaching out for the eosinophilia, and then they've got the subcut swelling in their legs. Adding more and more into the same character is often going to make it hard to hold on to. There's just too much density there. So here is a situation where I'd introduce another element, another character or something in the environment that's going on. I might do something in the environment just for simplicity that's able to represent that. So far, what have I got? I've got eosinophilia, I've got the abdo pain, I've got the chest pain, and I've got the subcut swelling. I need to have the itchy skin, I need to have the muscle soreness, liver and spleen enlargement, and the inflammation of the chest and the lungs. Straight away, what I'm thinking about is for itchy skin, I might make it like the landscape that they're on is they're in some kind of wasteland made of skin that has like scabs everywhere, which is just disgusting to think about, but I mean, hopefully it's disgusting, but also memorable. So it's kind of this land of sort of skin, and it has these scratch marks everywhere and just general kind of like redness, some bleeding going on here as well. At the moment, they're in this environment, but they're not interacting so much. I could just forget about the itchiness and I might just remember it as just normal dirt. So I want there to be something a little bit more, a little extra to do with this. I might have them actually sinking into one of these scabs. I'll take away this foot and then I'll have this big cut, that's red and bleeding, and they've got blood on their thigh as well, and their foot is actually getting stuck in here. So now you can see that there's a little bit more interaction between my elements. So I'm more likely to remember the pruritus, the itchy, the bleeding kind of skin, because the foot is actually stuck in it. Muscle pain, this is going to be tough. I'll put that on the side for now. Let's think of another character that I can introduce. I've already got this chain up here in the corner. This has to be attached to something. I'm going to draw a massive bicep here. And that bicep is actually going to be attached to an enormous liver. And this is like a liver slave driver. Give them the sunglasses, they're smoking a cigarette, and livers are kind of red, so I'll give them this kind of red coloring, make the skin yellow. So I've got a little bit more going on now. I've got the hepatosplenomegaly and I've got the muscles there, and I'm hoping that the muscles are gonna remind me of the myalgia, but I might forget. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make it so that this area where the attachment has held onto is like bleeding, and it's creating like this, almost like a river of blood that's kind of running through here. Okay, so now that's getting quite dramatic, and again, it's very morbid, and I feel like the chances of this being demonetized or flagged are just like increasing. So, that's like kind of concerning me in the back of my mind, but I guess if you're watching this, then it hasn't been taken down yet, so here's to hoping. So I've got my myalgia and I've got my hepatosplenomegaly. The next thing is the inflammation of the heart and of the lungs. Now, in reality, this is not the best way to learn this, because a lot of these symptoms you could actually figure out through just pure logic if you understood how the disease works. But just as an example's sake, I'm going to keep doing this. Let's just do one more thing here. Okay, so I had to think about this one quite a lot, and I was trying not to have somewhere that was too dense and packed, and I decided that this element here, the kind of wormy eosinophilia thing, is the area where there might be the most opportunity for me to do something. Instead of just being the worm inside the cell type thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it so that the worm is kind of like weaving in and out, like almost as it would weave in and out of an apple, but I'm going to have it weaving in and out of a heart. Okay. A little tip here is that if you draw with the color first and then you outline your color with something dark and black, it just makes it look nicer. And then I'm going to do the ring around it and then make sure it's nice and glowing. I might grab my little highlighter here and add some light. Okay, so I've got my image here, and in reality, I'll probably spend a little bit more time to make it look a little bit nicer, but it's good enough. And that took me, I don't know, something like 10 minutes while I was kind of talking out loud. So in reality, it would take me, I don't know, maybe between 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm probably gonna remember this. I know I've just looked at this, but if I close my eyes and I think about this, then I can see the guy with the chest pain, abdo pain, reaching, eosinophilia in the heart, so pericarditis and pleuritis in the landscape, which is the pruritus, and the chain is connected to the myalgia, which is then owned by the hepatosplenomegaly. And I'm looking around my image to see if there's anything that I've missed. Got the scab, the swelling in the legs, which was for the subcut swelling. And I think that was everything. That was, fairly easy to do. It's not a lot to remember, and I'm probably going to remember this for the next couple years. It's just truly gonna live rent-free in my mind. I won't be able to get rid of this even if I want to. But as I said, it was not necessarily the act of drawing it. It was I visualized it in my head and I thought about what I could create, and that's where the memory is gonna come from. And the visual aid is just there as kind of a reference point. It's like a snapshot of what I thought about. So my hypothesis was, if I can think about it, I'll still be able to remember it, even if I don't necessarily draw it out. And if I can get AI to generate the image, that might be good enough as it is. So now let's do the same thing with the list of symptoms of this other rare disease and see if we can get a similar level of memorability and how long that takes. So just making a list here of symptoms. Okay, so I've got a list of signs and symptoms now. This isn't a full list, but for fairness, I decided to do the same number of signs and symptoms, 8. Which was for this other disease, as well as 8 for this one. So now I'm going to take this list and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to think about it, I'm going to process it, I'm going to think about that visual, but the difference is that I'm going to use DALL to see if I can generate the image for me. So let's think about this microcephaly, which is talking about a smaller head, basically, and micrognathia, which is talking about a smaller jaw. So I would be imagining, and this is something that affects usually babies and very young kids. So I'm thinking of a child with a small head and a small jaw. Hiatal hernia is when you have like a hole in your diaphragm and then your stomach kind of comes up into your diaphragm. So I might think of someone having a stomach in their mouth, small head with a stomach in their mouth. Dystonia and hypotonia is talking about abnormal movements and reduced muscle strength. So I might think about someone with very, very small, very frail, fragile looking body that is doing some kind of dance move. Nystagmus is when your eyes do a certain type of kind of like a muscle twitch. So I might just remember it with making the eyes do something interesting. Developmental delay and intellectual disability, maybe having an IQ test picture or a pattern in the background or in their environment that they're interacting with somehow. Renal, so kidney, microvascular disease. So here I might have holding a net in their hands, like a fishing net with kidney bean inside of it. And in steroid-resistant nephrotic syndrome, which is protein in your urine that doesn't respond to steroid treatment, we might have a very muscular person holding a cup of, I'll probably write yellow liquid. Let's do something like that. So what I would have to write is, and you might be able to imagine this already. So I'll say small child with very small head with a stomach in their mouth with a very weak and fragile body doing a dance, holding a fishing net full of kidney beans, standing on a landscape full of geometric patterns in front of a muscular man holding a glass of yellow liquid. So now we click generate. And if they're able to pull out something that is able to follow that, that's just crazy. Just in itself, that will be absolutely nuts. And it's not, it's not bad. I think the style is a little bit weird here. So I might want to do something here, and I would say digital art instead. Well, let's see what happens here. I'll say just child with a very small head. Instead of with a stomach in their mouth, maybe, let's just say vomiting. So again, we load that up again and let's see what happens. Okay, so it's generated this now and it's not quite there yet. We're not really getting there, right? It's not really getting there. And so now I'm wondering how I'm able to modify this description so it actually still makes sense. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff that it's generating, and I don't know if it's because my description was not very good. Let me see if I can try to simplify this somehow. Child with a bird head, vomiting, with a thin body, dancing, holding a net of kidney beans in a landscape full of patterns. Maybe instead of a muscular man, I'll just have like a lake. And a lake of yellow water. Let's try that. So what I am noticing here is that I am having to compromise on what I really associated the most closely. So it's generating some very different types of images now that you can see. None of these children have a bird head, which are quite important parts of the image that we're trying to create. Let's try weak and thin child vomiting while dancing on a kidney bean. Let's try that. So you can see that it's starting to get simpler and simpler with each iteration to try and make it work. It just really doesn't want to make the kids vomit, I guess. So let's get rid of the vomiting. Instead of vomiting, let's do something else to express this. Let's see if we can get a weak and thin child dancing on a kidney bean in a landscape full of patterns and a lake of yellow water. Hey, this is pretty cool. This is pretty good, right? So now we've got, this is not bad, and their face looks real weird here. So that might in itself remind me, but I've got the lake here for the nephrotic syndrome. I've got they don't look really thin enough. They've got the dancing for the dystonia. So there's a few things coming through, but not really completely. Okay, I've been spending a little while on this now, and I can probably spend a little bit longer to try to get something. If I try to add the digital art, we still don't have the kidney bean on here. So dancing on a huge can of beans, maybe I can say that. One more iteration and see if we're able to pull anything up. Regardless, this is just impressive technology. It's just ridiculous. The first time I saw this, I thought, man, could this be used for this purpose? And maybe one day when it's out of beta, you will be able to use this for this. And that would be, that would be insane. Yeah, we've got the kind of on the stack of beans thing now, but we've sort of lost the yellow liquid. And none of these are really kind of what I was sort of thinking of. So I think I'm ready to make my verdict, which is that this is a just phenomenal piece of technology. But it's probably not going to be enough to replace the usage of abstracted visualizations as memory cues as part of studying, because the fact that there are only so many elements that it's able to use to generate something. And you often only use this type of technique when there is a considerable list of things that you want to generate. So if you've only got maybe 3 or 4 elements, you could probably pull something pretty good with this. But if you've got more than that, it's going to struggle and it's not really able to pull that together. At least not at the current version of the technology. But again, who knows? I mean, the team that's put this together is phenomenal. So maybe they can, take it up a step on top of that. But this has been a pretty different type of video. I hope that you've found this, I'm not really sure what this is, entertainment, education. Here's some tips here and there. I just thought it would be a really cool thing to make a topic of. It's probably not going to get picked up by the algorithm, probably not going to get any views, and it's probably going to be flagged for violence or something like that. So if you do like it, then please leave a like. I would appreciate your support. And again, if you are interested in learning a full step-by-step system on how to learn and use interesting techniques like this, but not in isolation, but as part of a bigger system, a bigger package that all works together to help you learn more efficiently, then you might like the full training program that I've got. You can find the link to it in the description. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.